Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, my name is Glory and I'm a third-year student who is graduating this year from the Bartlett School of Architecture at UCL. And because I just finished submitting my final project last week, so I thought because studio is quite empty and I have some time on my hands after submission, I thought it would be a good idea to share my final project this year for my final year of undergraduate, and I hope you'll be interested. So I have my portfolio in front of me right now, and I thought it would be nice to do just a little presentation because we did have to do a review presentation for our project right after we submit it, which is around 10 minutes. But obviously in this video, I think it'll be a little longer because I want to show kind of my experience going through this and also showcase my physical drawings at the end. But I would recommend you to watch the previous video, which will be linked here or there, for my project 1, because we do have 2 projects this year and it's kind of linked to my previous project, so I thought it would be interesting if you watch that one first so you get kind of an idea of how I work and the connection between the 2 projects. So a little disclaimer is that I only represent myself and my work and part of my unit, so I'm in unit 3 and I did a lot of hand drawings this year, whereas a lot of other people from other units may have different methods of working, which could be quite digital or, model making. So just keep that in mind when you look through my projects. And let's go. So I have my portfolio in front of me. It's around 100 spreads, so let's go through this quickly. Technically, I only had around 10 minutes to present this, but I was speaking so fast, so hopefully I won't take as long. Anyways, A Garden of Rebirth in the Forest of Death. Chapter 1, A Garden of Rebirth. So Aokigahara, the suicide forest known for its unusual geography and abandoned objects, a garden of rebirth will be constructed in this forest of death, to transform the forest into a growing garden of the everyday. It is a building that never ends and grows, to be stood for all of eternity, at least 10,000 years. As a hybrid between a garden, monastery, hotel, the building records the passing of time. Maintained by the gardener, the garden also acts as a refuge for visitors and lost souls that wander in the forest seeking for an end, a place for the dead and the living to exchange moments. The embedding of the garden within the forest will be derived from Japanese gardens and structures from the Buddhist and Shinto religion. The building will be informed by pine trees in the forest, with a technical investigation into the study of shaping trees to construct desired elements and harvesting furniture as a self-sustained structure. Hence, physical tests of grafting, framing, and bending will be carried on tree saplings to incorporate and fuse different types of gardens into the building, and to explore the notion of the evanescence of life and the essence of Zen. So this was a small introduction to my project 1, which is the Gardener's Diary, where I essentially created this large-scale growing drawing diary as a way of healing mentally and physically between my psyches through architecturizing nature and the garden and gardenizing the architecture. So this drawing language was devised to create a sense of divine nature. So here you have the conclusion drawing for my project 1 in terms of finding a language. So this is some of the programs and parameters of my project. For example, conceptual collage, the different spaces that will be needed, the inhabitants of the space, such as the kami of the dead, and then you also have the number of suicides that happen annually in the forest. And I just wanted to mention briefly, I kind of picked the suicide forest and mental health as a theme because of the struggles that I went to personally, which I also explained a bit about in the previous video of my project 1. So here are the garden rituals that happen in the building. For example, daily rituals of waking up, poem writing, watering the garden, meditation, and then seasonal rituals such as furniture flowering, harvesting the furniture, and bending and shaping the dormant trees. Feel free to pause the video and just read through the text because I'm not going to have enough time to go through all of them. So this is the garden timeline. For example, in the beginning, more care will be needed, and then as time goes on, less care will be needed as the garden becomes a self-maintenance garden. And then here are some sequence plan sketches. And then chapter 2, the Forest of Death. So here's the site, just looking at the suicide forest in relation to Mount Fuji, lava flow, and then the objects that people leave behind when they go into the forest to seek for an end, the different ice caves and water, the ground conditions, and some images. And then some detailed site area with the tree placement analysis. For example, this part of land would be landscape for more tree growth to frame the building due to less drops in the ground. And some sections. And here's just a drawing I did looking at the changes in the site and the different trees to get an atmosphere of how it is. and then the flora and fauna with the different tree types and animals in the forest, seasonal changes on site with snow, and also tree pollination and how pine trees are pollinated by the wind. And here are the different tree types in the forest, such as pinus and suga trees, and looking at the life cycle of trees and how to incorporate all of them into the building, such as the lifespan of 800 years, which takes around 300 years to mature. And chapter 3, death and nature. So this is just looking at the notion of nature in Japan, of how Japanese people see nature as an extension of themselves and a way of learning to love and respect nature and to apprehend other universal truths. So here's just a staircase handle detail that I drew and developed, which would then become a growing drawing. And then I also looked at the culture of death in Japan in terms of death rituals and the spatial formation of funerals, and also Shinto burials and the different steps included to pay their respect to the dead. So I looked at Full Grown, which is a furniture garden that is in the UK that grows trees into chairs and other furniture, which this kind of formed the basis of my tech investigation as well. So this is a drawing looking at the curated and the wild in terms of the garden and the forest and the boundaries between them. And then a tree clock to kind of record the passing of time. And this is kind of the drawing as it grows over time, different moments in the drawing, developing details. Chapter 4, an embodied spirit. So I looked at the differences between Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples and the kind of layout that they have regarding these spaces. And I also looked at monk life and gardening and also Zen gardens. And then I also looked at devices used in Buddhism and Shinto and tried to architecturize them into things such as this rotating door, which is derived from a prayer wheel. And this is me looking at the Roranji temple, the spatial strategy, also Villa Katsura, basically looking at how the spaces are embedded in nature and the kind of spatial layout of private and public spaces and how to incorporate that back into my own building from this reference. So this is some detailed strategies such as fallen hollow trees, manipulating tree roots, branch fitting armatures, and these different moments that could be used in the building. So here's the growing drawing. And then I also looked at Water Garden by Ishigami, Tuma Brion by Carlos Scarpa, and Inagawa Cemetery by David Chipperfield, which essentially are just all references to look at how they incorporate nature into the spaces and also just natural building materials that could be used in the building. So here's the first iteration of the plan, which I think looks so bad. My tutor said it looks like I just dropped the bomb in the forest, but looking past that, basically the hierarchy didn't work. There wasn't enough hierarchy of spaces and the boundaries wasn't that clear. And instead of the whole embracing the forest and embedding it in nature, it kind of did the opposite. So yeah, moving on. Chapter 5, Shaping Nature. This is kind of where I started to do more into tech. So tech is another module where you have to do physical tests to kind of test materials, ways of building, construction, to see, just to kind of prove that your building theoretically could work, but just made in terms of smaller tests. So I looked at bonsai shaping and tree shaping, and then basically created my own cutting and pruning manual by sketching out all the possible ways to shape trees. And then this is a grafting manual and looking also at pruning angles. For example, 70 degrees is deemed to be the best angle to graft plants, and also looked at staking and also trunk bending and looking at the tools required and also how to treat infections and wounds. And this is the kind of next iteration interior spaces of the growing drawing and different detail. For example, this grafted roof and also pleat trees as a part of the walls. And this is kind of the growing drawing overall, which is kind of what it is now. And then this is Living Root Bridge, which is another reference to look at of how they guide the branches and roots to create this suspension bridge and for people to pass through it. So this is the next iteration of the plan of embed it in the forest and embrace the forest. And this is the different section sketches based on this drawing. So chapter 6, Architecturizing Nature. So this is really doing some shaping tests on the saplings. So for those who has been following my vlogs, this is kind of where the sapling tests came in, mostly for tech, so it's not as much in this portfolio, but I can go through my tech portfolio a little bit at the end to show you. So this is my willow sapling test, and the setup of the test with the styrofoam box, soil, and the saplings. And then I grafted the saplings and put them together, and you can see the kind of growth just under a month. The shoots are growing compared to the buds appearing at the front. And here are just some drawings looking at the growth process and the grafting process and the different graft locations in the building. And this is the growth process looking at the framing shaping test and the growth overall and how it maintained its shape over just 2 weeks. And this is like a drawing looking at the different fixings with the red and how it's held to the wooden dowels as a support mechanism and the different bend locations in the building. So here's the pleach test, and this is the before and after of how you would pleach it according to the dowels behind it. And then this is another drawing looking at the growth process of the fixings as well. And this is the after, and again, the pleach locations. So here's just a process isometric drawing, which shows simultaneous timelines of tree growth and armature joints to hold the building in place. Characters and gardener appear at different ages to convey the building's growth. So here is kind of different moments I picked out from the drawing, and looking at the simultaneous timelines, such as inhabitants moving a felled tree, and the different growths for the entrance arch and bench with armatures. And then here's looking at my armature design test. So I essentially created these armatures to hold the tree in place and frame it, and I kind of used the wire and the wax thread to hold it in place. And this is just analysis drawing of the design of my armature with the nut and bolt, metal wire, and the wax thread. And then this is just the elevation view looking at it, holding it in place, and the detail locations. So this is just a sequence plan looking at how the building grows over time and how some spaces could be formed before other spaces as the trees would grow into the prefabricated spaces, which is probably going to be timber framework, and then the trees grow into them, so the spaces would just keep growing over time and you have to constantly prune them. So here's a fixings design test at 1:1 at life scale, and kind of the different elements of that with the tree, the rope fixing, and then the armature bend and the soil connection post and the detail locations again. And this is the next iteration of the plan, looking at the Great Hall, the different gardens between them. And then this is the plan with the integrated systems, as you can see here in the key. And I just kind of labeled the different type of spaces in the forest and why this is the shape of the building and the plan. So obviously this is like determined by the tree locations and the placement of them. For example, this is the site for the main building because no trees are growing within this area, and then there's a big drop in the land, hence there's like less tree growth, and the orientation of the building for maximum sunlight and wind, and how these cells are formed this way because of the different clusters of the trees. So just kind of like explaining my thought process and why the building came to be this way. And then this is the section, so looking at kind of the stone foundations and then the tree root growth and how the different spaces on the top and the bottom and the spirits could enter. Chapter 7, inhabiting the trees. So some of my tree saplings actually died after a few months, so I wanted to incorporate the death of the trees into the building. So this is a small elevation I did looking at how the dead trees could be incorporated in it. For example, thatch roof from dead twigs, and the firewood for the central fireplace, and also insulation from the wood chips and natural resins. So then I also looked at the wall building joint detail controlling the growth of the trees. Here's a sketch. And then just looking at the wall building joint detail, the different detail locations, and for example, the column branch framework, and then just making it really detailed. And the pleach trees here, the grafted trees to support the building. And again, this tree holding the building in place and the mechanism I derived from my tech tests. And then this is looking at the connection detail locations. So this is the timber stone scarf joint from Japanese construction. And then the tree fixing, again, like I did, and different ways of like garden knots and rope tying, which is also featured here in the pleach trees, which would be framing the walls. And then this is just looking at the thatch roof detail with the mori roof as a reference and some sketches to look at the enclosure of the building. And this is looking at the Japanese thatch roofs and a sketch to look at the thatch combs. And this is the detail location with the drawing looking at the thatch combs and then a tree holding it in place and how the roof can kind of become waterproof at some point. This is the exterior and interior of the roof, labeling the intertwined sticks for coverage and the horizontal beams and the exterior. And this is just a drawing looking at the enclosure and cladding, and a sketch looking at the framework detail. And this is kind of the framework detail with nature kind of taking over time, with the thatch roof sealed to prevent leakage, and then a tree holding it in place with a staircase for maintenance, and also places for, you see the small bird nest for the animals there to grow, the fireplace, and then some tree furniture here as well. And then this is the fireplace, the heating of the building, and just kind of looking at the tree shelf and kind of how it's going to be held into place. So chapter 8, a garden of rebirth in the forest of death. So here are the final drawings. I know I went through the whole portfolio really fast, but I highly recommend you, if you feel like looking at it closely, just, pause the video and just immerse yourself in the drawings fully. So this is a series of drawing looking at the allusion to time and growth, the wall detail, say like 1,000 years compared to then 10,000 years. Like, how does the pleach tree grow? How does the grafted tree grow? And how does this tree grows and hold it in place. And then this is the thatch roof, for example. The trees and the twigs kind of grow over time and come together and intertwine over time. And you can see the tree kind of holding the bamboo gutter in place, which collects the rainwater as well. And then this is a structural fragment of the building, and you can see how nature takes over time, like I said. And this is just an interior space and seeing how the spaces grow over time and nature taking over. Like I said, the fireplace, the tree furniture, and people just enjoying it. So this is the ground floor mortal level plan, like where humans are going to be. So like I said, the program is kind of a hybrid between a monastery, hotel, and a garden. So you have the grand hall here with the refectory and dining place here, and the food garden behind to provide food for the kitchen, and then kind of a library and poem writing area here. And then you have all the different spaces connected by these Zen gardens. You can kind of see the boundary between different gardens and connecting them. And this is a bathhouse, and this is the meditation space, which is surrounded by these water gardens, as you can hear the sound of the water as you meditate. And then you have the gardener's lodges, which is enclosed as a relic, and also some spaces can change over time as well because the building's going to be there for so long. And also this is surrounded by another water garden, which is then carried by these rills to these smaller water gardens next to the tree clock that records the passing of time. And then up here you have the entrance of the tree arches and the grand entrance to enter the grand hall. And then obviously here you have the different cells, which is essentially just like bedrooms and rooms for the people who are going to stay there. And then each of the rooms in between is a smaller private garden, and then that kind of creates the contrast between a private garden to the forest behind it. And then the storyline is that the cells kind of like in the beginning is more squared and rectangular because it kind of started growing from this sacred tree, and then it kind of got more irregular as you move away from it. And the road kind of leads to this water pavilion at the end where people can stay as well. So that's the ground floor, and the forest enclosing it, and again embracing the forest and feeling the forest as it is. And then this is the first floor spirit level. So you have basically the way that it changes is that the top floor is kind of more reserved for the spirits of the forest and the dead to kind of come in and attract them. So you have these crystal staircases that are symbolically letting the spirits into the space. And you have these thatch roofs and spaces for the spirits to reside in, and then some fabric canopies and thatch roofs for these cells in the building. And then this is the main section, so you can kind of see the different languages between the bottom and the top floor. So the bottom would be for the mortals, and then the control of the tree roots and how the trees hold everything in place. And you see some like small people kind of shaping the trees, and then the entrance at the back and how the trees kind of grow out of the space. And obviously the top floor is reserved for the spirits, so it's just the thatch roof, and you have the lights and the kind of divine space for the spirits to enter here, and the staircase would be here, and you have the wind entering and the petals and the leaves kind of entering it. And then I just wanted to have this kind of divine nature feeling to the drawings and the forest and the building as well. And the background is just the forest in place, and I spent so much time drawing all these trees because all the trees in the background, I drew them one by one, all the petals. So yeah. And then this is the cell section. So there's like two cuts. So this is all the cells that the people are living in, and the sacred tree in the middle, and kind of connected to the cells with these paper fortunes, and the water pavilion at the end, and the fabric canopy with the lanterns, and then the forest behind. And then this is a long section, which is the longer cut. So I kind of wanted to show the main building and the different spaces with the tree clock and the cells here. So here's a zoom in of the space. Again, the different languages, top and bottom floor. And then you have the graph, the trees holding it in place, the dining area, and then the food garden in the back. You have someone kind of fixing the canopy, and then a chimney at the back. And then this is the thatch roof with the trees growing into place. And then this is the grand entrance with the rotating door, and then the spirit entrance. And then you have these grafted trees of the grand entrance leading up to the tree clock recording the passing of time. And then you have the cells in the background, and also seeing the simultaneous timelines as these cells are still being built because the building is kind of having different growth periods at different times. And this is the grand hall, the interior of the grand hall, and you have the grafted trees growing into the top space, and then some arches, some tree furniture, the fireplace, and some people kind of like fixing the bleached trees, and you have this little girl kind of just like going for the light. Yeah. And then this is kind of the embedding of the building on the site. So you have kind of the building itself and the cells kind of still growing over time, the bleached trees, and then kind of just this divine feeling of the forest. And then this is the end. So as the building will stand and grow for more than 10,000 years, the required knowledge needs to be passed on to the next generations. The gardener sincerely hopes and believes this handbook will be a manual to continue the legacy of their role in the Garden of Rebirth. So that's it. So I also wanted to show a little bit of the tech side of this project because this is the design portfolio. So I have another portfolio, which is the tech side, which is a lot more structural to kind of just let people know that you know your building is going to work, whereas this is more of the creative thing. But before we go on to that, I feel like I just want to fully appreciate the kind of hand drawings and just let you guys know that I really enjoyed my time doing these hand drawings. It just makes me feel like so happy and immersed. Like it feels like you can inhabit the space through the drawings, and it's just so therapeutic. And especially the theme of mental health, you know, in this world of architecture where everything is like grind, do it. And I just feel like it's a really good way to bring out the theme of mental health, because when I was doing this project, like obviously I was stressed, but I also entered the state of flow and I don't want it to end. I just want to keep going, and you know, I loved it basically. And this project really means a lot to me with the struggles I've been through. So yeah, you can go back to the video, click pause for the drawings, because there's just so many detail that you can easily miss if you don't look closely. And it was really fun for me to kind of just have fun with the drawings and say, I want to put a little person there, the petals kind of flowing like this, the wind blowing like that. So it was really nice. Yeah, so here's my tech portfolio. It's kind of similar because it's the same theme, but you need to have a contents page, and I kind of separated them in terms of like preparing the soil, gathering the saplings, 10 years of growth, 10,000 years, 1,000 years, inhabiting, nurturing. So I'll just go through it really fast. You have an abstract, like it's kind of similar, honestly, but the differences is like there's a lot more drawings in this one that I haven't really put in the previous one. So for example, in terms of the sapling test that I did, there's a lot more detail in this one. So you can see the graft, and then this is kind of like more over time, and then more drawings. This is with a cardboard as the backing to support this drawings. I did some calculations, or like moments as well. Basically, you also have, I was also looking at compost, water, and tree. Some rope detail. I also looked at the structural strategy, and then like the structural forces diagram, the dead and live loads. And then this is like, for example, ventilation, where the hot and cool air is going to enter the roof openings. And then the chimney sketches. And then this is looking at, again, heating and lighting, how the heating is going to enter the building, for example. And then this is the rainwater collection, the different water channels, and then how the water would be collected, etc. And the irrigation, like to water the plants, and then the points of irrigation systems, and then watering the plants, for example, like where the valve, the pressure, the filter is, and the sprinkler mist irrigation, and then treating the compost from the food garden, how is a compost toilet going. And then, yeah, just analysis of those things. And then conclusion and legacy. And then you need to have a bibliography. And yeah, so that was the portfolio section. And I wanted to show you guys the final physical drawings that I did, because as you saw in my vlogs, all of them are really huge and big and kind of like A1, A2. So I just want to show you guys and, you know, come along this journey with me. So let's get the drawings. Okay, I really don't know how I'm gonna show this, but anyways. So this is the detailed drawing, the growing one that I did. So it's like that. I'm gonna put in probably some close-up videos of this drawing, but it just grew over time. So this is the A0 plan one. Super big. And then this was the first floor plan. So I kind of drew a little bit, and then I just scanned this and photoshopped it on the bigger drawing, so I didn't have to draw all the context again. But this is the first floor plan. So this is the main section drawing. I think I like this one the best out of all the sections actually. And this is the cells section. And then this is the long section that is supposed to piece together like this, but I have to separate it into. So this is the first half of it, and the second half with the tree clock and cells. Can you see me? And then this is the isometric drawing I did. And then obviously I have a ton of these like smaller drawings that I did for tech. Like there's so many. But you already saw them in the portfolio anyway, so I won't like go through these with you. But yeah, so those are my physical drawings. So I'll just film a little bit for you guys. These are all the drawings that I just showed you guys. But I think it was nicer if you just look at the scans because you can see all the detail. Whereas you have to really be in person to kind of appreciate all the detail if you look at these. But yeah, so those are the drawings. Really large and all my babies. I also realized I forgot to show the interior drawings, so these are much smaller, but it was really fun to do these as well because it's only around A5 on A3, so it was really fun too. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the prizes I got. So the experimental technology prize is for my tech, which means I kind of pushed the boundaries of my tech test results and just adding those into my actual design project. And the Bartlett School Medal is kind of achieving over 80% in your project, which is a huge achievement and I'm quite grateful. I also wanted to just show kind of like my grades here just as transparency and not really showing off. So just take it as it is. But I just wanted to showcase kind of the scores I got this year and kind of how the effort translated into the results. But obviously I think I did quite well in design, but I feel like I could have improved a bit more for history in terms of my writing skills. But the most important thing is I think I tried my best and that is what I got. So I'm still giving myself a pat on the back and telling myself good job for these 3 years at Bartlett, but obviously nothing can really beat the bonds and relationships I've built in school, so I am just going to be very eternally grateful for that. Anyways, so that was my final year project at the Bartlett. I really can't believe it that it's like passed by so quickly, but honestly I think I had a really good time, and I can't thank enough my tutors and all of the support they've given me and supporting me to do full-on hand drawings. And this project honestly just meant so much to me because of the way that I did it, the method I'm using hand drawing, and also the theme that really resonated with me, the whole process of doing the sapling tests and having the gardener supporting me as well, and doing such a meaningful tech investigation with shaping the saplings. And it's just something I've never done before, and I feel like I really pushed myself this year, so I just really enjoyed it and I had a really good time. But yeah, again, keep in mind this is just my experience. Everyone could have such a different experience, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be really happy to answer any questions down in the comments below, so just let me know. And thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.